Everyone. I'm talking about automating SQL Server DBA's task. So it's mostly on the demos, very less slides. So my name is Mohammed Qadeer and I'm working for DSP. We are database managed service providers specialized in Microsoft SQL Server and Oracle. This is my blog. I recently started in April 2018, and this is my Twitter handle. Okay, today I'll talk about synchronizing SQL Server logins in an always-on availability group and restoring log backups. Sometimes if you don't have a differential backup or you can't take a differential backup and you have a lot of files to restore, then how to do that. So I'll start with the availability groups. So this is a typical scenario. It's a two-node availability group. A DBA set it up like me. So everyone is able to connect. Happy days. There are two users currently, and both users are on both replicas, primary replica and secondary replica. The users are able to connect using the listener name, and there are no issues until the failover occurs. So as soon as the failover occurs, before failover, if you create more users, whatever user you will create, it will be in the primary replica, and it's not automatically replicating on the secondary node. I think everyone knows that. So the mistake we do that we don't create those logins on the secondary replica manually. And sometimes we forget. So if we forget to make the logins, create the logins on the other side, and a failover occurs, it will break. Those users are unable to connect. So these users are John and Klaus. They are currently connecting to using the listener name to the primary replica. And a disaster strikes. Failover occurs. And the current primary replica, SQL A, will become secondary. And the secondary replica, that is SQL B, it will become primary. JG and Lana, they have the logins there on the secondary node, so they're able to connect. But John and Klaus, they don't have the login, so they were unable to connect. And the problem, they will have problems, and then you will having out of hours call or whatever that, we are unable to connect. Everything was working, so what happened? And then you start to investigate it. So I have a script which does that automatically. So how it works, like it uses PowerShell and it uses T-SQL. So it goes to the primary replica, it checks that how I did it, like I deployed it on both nodes or all the replicas, how many replicas you have. If you have 3-node cluster, you have 2-node cluster, whatever you have deployed in all the nodes. So it will go and check, first of all, that whether it is a primary replica or not. If it's not, then it will come out. It will not execute anything. So if it is a primary replica, then it will check the prerequisites. And the prerequisites are, it should have the SP hexadecimal installed. If it is there, fair enough. If it's not there, then it will go and deploy it. And then it will call another function that will go and get the login script from the primary. So it will put the script in a file and store the files on the C drive of that replica. And then it will go and get the list of all secondary replicas. Again, it will query the SQL Server and try to get the list of all the replicas from there. So once those are there, then it will execute the script and on all the secondary replicas, and that's it, job done. Next is the demo. Let's go and check. Okay. Can you all see this code? Okay. This is, sorry.
Someone said that because we were only 2 minutes into it, maybe you want to start over and just quickly go over it again.
Okay. Okay. No problem. Okay, someone requested to go over again, so I'll start from the beginning. Okay, so yes, this is a typical 2-node AAG cluster. So we have 2 replicas, SQL A and SQL B, 2 users on each side, and they are connecting using the listener name. So far, the configuration looks good. Everyone is connecting, no problems. Then we created 2 more users or logins. They are connecting as well. Still, they are connecting to the node A, which is the primary replica. The only problem with this configuration is that it doesn't replicate your logins on the secondary nodes. So in order to replicate the logins on the secondary replica, you need to do it manually or utilize some other technique that it should be replicated on the other side. So far, everything is working. So failure occurs, something happens to node A, so it fails over to node B. So now SQL B becomes primary replica and SQL A is the secondary replica. Now everyone is these first 2 users, JG and Lana, they are able to connect without any issues because they exist on the secondary replica as well as they were initially configured. But these 2 are having issues, Klaus and John. They are unable to connect because they don't exist on the secondary replica SQL B. So it's a problem. You'll get a call, you have to fix it. Or you can use a script, a PowerShell script, or some other method to replicate users, whatever users you create. I created this while I was working with some of our clients. They are having issues with this users creation and DB creation. So they were using SQL Server 2012 Enterprise Edition. And in SQL Server 2012 Enterprise Edition, I think everyone knows that there was no auto-seeding option. So if you are adding a database on the primary replica, it is not replicating automatically on the secondary nodes. So what they were doing, for each of their website, it is automatically creating a database on the primary node, but it is not going on the secondary node. So they were missing 2 things. They don't have the databases on the secondary replica, and they don't have logins on the secondary replica. So they requested us to do something like it will deploy something or create a script which will create the databases on the secondary nodes as well and all the logins. So I've created that, but I'm not using or I'm not showing you that the DB replication here because SQL 2016, Microsoft introduced auto-seeding, so we don't need that anymore. So if you create a database on your primary replica, so what auto-seeding does is it automatically, if you turn it on, so you need to turn it on manually. So you need to turn on the auto-seeding or at availability group level, and you need to grant permissions to the availability group that it can create databases on secondary replicas. So what it does, when you create a database and you add it on the primary node in the availability group, it automatically replicates to all secondary nodes. But there are some limitations, like you cannot have more than 5 databases, which can be replicated at the same time, or if the DBs are very big, there will be latency. So all these limitations are there. But anyways, so what this script does, it is deployed in each and every node. While it checks where is it okay? Yeah. Okay. So When it runs, it checks, first of all, that whether it is a primary replica. If it is a primary replica, it continues, otherwise it stops. The job doesn't, the script doesn't execute on the secondary nodes. So it checks for the prerequisites, which are SP hexadecimal. If it is not deployed, what it does, it goes and deploy the SP hexadecimal on the secondary nodes. And then it generates a script, store the scripts in a TXT file on the local replica in C drive. It creates the folder and creates the file as well. And then once everything is written in the file, then it goes and reads the script and run it on all the secondary nodes. Okay, so let me show you how it works. So this is what I was talking about. Like, this is a simple T-SQL query which goes and check whether it is a primary replica or not. Here is the check, the where clause. So what it does, it goes to this is what I'm doing. I'm invoking the SQL CMD and passing this query which is assigned to this. And it goes to this server, which is the local computer, or you can give the server name explicitly, you can put the name here. It goes and execute the query, bring the result and store the result in this one. Okay. And then it checks for the result, that whether the result is null, or if it is null, if it is null, then there is nothing. It breaks out, as I've shown you on that diagram as well, that if it is not a primary replica, it will be null. So it will go break it, come out of the code. Otherwise, if it is, then it will go to this else part and execute the rest of the code, which is okay. So yeah, here it passes the result and checks for the replica and stores the replica name in this variable, which is primary replica. Then it checks for the prerequisites. So there is a function I've created at the top, check store proc, and it passes the server name, which is the primary replica. So it goes up and checks for the in this one. So it's a simple check. That the store procedure is there or not. If this store procedure SP hexadecimal is there, it will return 1 and it will check that, okay, it exists. If it doesn't exist, then it will call this create hexadecimal function. And what it does, this function just contains the store procedure, the code for that as SP hexadecimal. So it just gets that code, passes that code to the server instance. And the server instance is that which we are passing here in this, if you can see. So it will pass it to the primary replica. So when we called this check stored proc, we passed server name here. This one. So this primary replica is the server, is the primary replica name. So it goes first to the check store procedure function, and then from there it goes to the create. If it is not there, then it will create it. And then it executes this get script. So the get script is this one. It's here. Again, it's a T-SQL. That is not my code. I picked it up from Claire's websites. I've provided the proper reference on my blog as well. So from where I got it, very little. I tweaked it with some things, and then what it does, it goes there, it checks for the recently created logins. So how I deployed it on the servers, like I created server level triggers. So whenever a login is created or changed, it triggers this. It triggers the trigger calls the job to execute. So the job executes and it has this script, and this script execute against the trigger, and it will copy all the logins from the primary replica to the secondary node. So here I'm creating a directory to place that script in. So it creates a temp directory on the C drive, then it assigns, actually, I've created it. When I tried to put the script there, I tried to put the file there, it was giving me error that ACL due to access control list, that the user, because it was executing on the SQL agent account, so SQL agent account doesn't have permissions to read or write anything from there. So then what I did, I picked this part, the ACL part from Adam the Automator. So I picked up this one, but I added this SQL Server service account to get the SQL Server service account username. So I passed everything in this, and then what it does, it gives it the full control, so it can read, write, whatever it wants to do in that. Here I mentioned. It gives it full control, so it can write, the agent account can write on that directory which we have created. So the script is stored now in the script.txt file. And then it comes back to where it was called. Here. Once you have the script, then I'm running another query on the same primary replica. But this time I'm passing this this condition to bring me the only secondary replicas. And it will store in this result variable again. And then I'm passing this and storing it into these, because it can be more than one. It's not only one, maybe you have 2, 3 secondary replicas, not one. And then I'm looping through all these replicas. And what I'm doing is I'm passing that query, which is coming from this script.txt file, which we have created on C drives. It is putting it as a string in this query variable, and then I'm passing that query on all the secondary replicas. So it is going there and creating one by one all the logins. And at the end, it just deletes that script.txt file as well from the location. Any question in this one? Yeah. It can be ordered by replica name as well. It doesn't matter, because it will just pick up the secondary replicas.
If the replicas have a different name though, because otherwise it's as opposed to the name of the server.
Yeah, you're right. Yes. Yeah, it will be secondary, but it will pick up only the secondary replicas, and all the whatever it will. This query will return. It will return only the secondary replicas. It will not return anything apart from secondary replicas. So the main aim of this thing is just to get the names of those replicas which are secondary. It doesn't matter what order it is bringing in.
Do you need the order then?
No, we don't need the order. Yeah. Anything else? No? Okay.
Is it possible just to use PowerShell rather than mix PowerShell and a SQL script? I mean, it sounds like a PowerShell equivalent of the SQL.
Yeah, you can use only PowerShell as well if you don't want to use the T-SQL. But I used it this way because it was easy for me. I found the code already from somewhere, from someone's website in T-SQL. So I just used that T-SQL, I passed that T-SQL to get the script out.
Because I'm not a SQL expert. I'm sure not everyone is a SQL expert. But when you're trying to write PowerShell script while do some SQL tasks, those kind of thing will be, I think it's very difficult for me to understand some of the SQL, script thing. If it's possible just using PowerShell, that'll be more easy.
Yeah, it will be easy if you're using only PowerShell, but I haven't used it. I did it this way. I don't know how to use it using only PowerShell. There must be some ways to do it. Yeah. Okay, so let's see if we can do something here. So I have this. I have some logins. So this is B. So let's see what permissions it has. It has nothing, just public. And here is public. So if we change here, say, if I give him these two and run this script, so if they're successfully copied, let's see. So it copied those two changes on the other side. Okay, any question on this? No? Okay.
What happens if a login is created and then there's a failover?
Yeah.
And then when do you run the script? How do you run the script?
Okay, so that's why I said that I've deployed server level triggers. So as soon as you create the login, it automatically kicks it off. So I have it here, I disabled it. Let me show you. And it is on secondary replica as well. As I'll enable it there, but it won't do anything. The job will execute, but it will not do anything there. So we have these two. So let's remove these, or let me grant some more permissions. So if we go here, remove these two and make him sysadmin. Hopefully this will not give an error and it will execute. It's executing. Yeah, okay. So it removed those and added sysadmin. Okay, so now I have another one. This is just, actually I was working with a client and they had VMs in Azure, and they wanted to migrate. They want to downgrade it from Enterprise Edition to Standard Edition. And they had quite a lot of databases, like almost 700 DBs on each server, and they had 4 servers. and some of them were huge. So what they wanted to do is like they want to replicate it to another server in Azure as well, not on-premise. And the task was to migrate everything there. So I've checked everything, planned everything, and then, okay, on this Saturday, we will do the migration. What happened, like they had Azure VM backups scheduled every Saturday in the morning, like it runs 3 a.m. So whatever I have practiced or I have checked or whatever pre-work I've done, I've tested, actually I did a POC for them for one of the server. So how it was, like I was restoring the full backups and then I was taking the differential, because what they were doing, they were executing transaction log backup every 15 minutes. So 4 backups in 1 hour multiplied by 700 databases is quite a lot of files. So my plan was that I'll take a differential backup and then just restore the differential backups on Saturday. And everyone will be happy, because it was like, it was taking around 8 hours to restore the differential backups for 700 databases for 1 server. And the outage window they have provided me was 2 hours. So what I planned was that I will do the full backups on Friday, restore them, and then I'll take a differential backup before the outage, restore them, and on the outage, then I'll take the final backup and restore them. So it was like I calculated everything. It was within 2 hours I was able to complete. But when Saturday came, I tried to kick off differential backup at 2 p.m. It gave me an error that there is no base LSN found, or there is no full backup exist for this database. And I was surprised because the full backup was there, the job executed successfully, I restored it, so it was still complaining about that. And on further investigation, I found that there is an Azure VM backup that executes 3 a.m. on Saturday, and it breaks that LSN. I don't know why it takes that backup and that backup doesn't work, because the transaction log was executing fine. There was no issue with transaction log. Only the differential I can't take. So now the problem was either to postpone that migration or use the transaction log backups to restore everything. So I've given them both options, that this is what it is. What do you want to do? They said, we want to go ahead, do the transaction log restore. So I told them it will take long. So they said, that's fine, no problem. So I started around 3 p.m. and I finished 2 a.m. So this was the script that I used at that time to do the full backup restore. So what it is doing is going and checking in the MSDB database the history where the backups happen. So it picks up the backup location from there and stores it in the path variable. So this is for the full. So for this demo, I've just filtered for 2 databases, test and DBA, but for them, I put the, wow, that's not good. So for them, I put that it shouldn't bring the system DBs. It should bring everything except system databases like master and those 4 DBs. It should take out, and then rest of them it should bring. I filtered it from the backup start date. I put the time that, okay, from where to where it picks up the full backups. And then here I'm passing that query and storing the results in the path. So what it does, it is bringing that, let me just bring it up. So it's just picking up the physical device name and attaching that source server name, so which I have assigned here at the top with this variable SQL, that is the source server. So what it does, it will replace it with this SQL and then add the physical file name there. destination server is SQL and the target path where it copies all the files. So it's not, it won't do the backup, sorry, the restore from the network location. So what I'm doing, I'm copying it locally on that machine, and then I'll restore it from there. And here it just goes through the path, each and every path. I had an issue with this thing as well. Let me share this one with you. Yes. So when you are passing a UNC path to storing in a variable and then try to check it, it fails. It says that the path not found, or the location doesn't exist. So I've spent a lot of time to figure out what is happening. So luckily I found on Stack Overflow that when you are passing a UNC path, so what it does, if it is a file system, your prompt is on file system, then it will take it. You will not get any error. But if the prompt is not file system, if it's something else, then you'll get an error, path not found. So as I was using SQL, so as soon as the query executes, it's changed the prompt to PS SQL Server. So when it is PS SQL Server, it gives you an error that path doesn't exist, or the location doesn't exist, and nothing else. And then you think that something wrong. I don't know. This thing is there. It exists. Why it's not executing? So I spent some time to identify this issue. So the fix for this is use this file system namespace. I don't know whether it is a namespace or an assembly, but mostly people, they say that it's a namespace. So I use this. It solves that problem. So what it does, it puts it back to the file system and just check the path name, UNC path, against it. And then you won't get this error. So this is where I'm doing the copy. And this one. So just a simple copy item from source to destination. The paths were up, the variables. So then it is checking the target path. It's testing if it exists with the file name. So the file name is copied, so it is locally exist now. So then what it does, it just execute this query, which is a restore query. Simple. So this is for the full backup. So again, we'll use the same servers. So it has only 2 databases. So what I'm going to do is I'm restoring these 2, DBA and test, on SQLB, which doesn't have these 2. So the full backup will execute. It will go and pick up the files, 2 files. It restore 2 files. So now they're here. A similar thing is for the log backups. The only difference is that it checks for the log backup files within time range, whatever time range you will give it. It will display you what it is doing, each and every file name. So that's how I used to restore those files. So it was like 80,000 files, I think, on that day I restored. Long day. So it will continue for a while because there are around 900 files to restore. Any question in this one? So it's actually restoring everything from 16th September midnight to today, 20th September 2030. And the backups, log backups are executing every 15 minutes for these two databases. So it will be around 800, 850 files. There is another one as well, but I think we are almost on the time. So actually what this is, we have different clients. So they have, some of them they have in contract with us that we have to do health checks for them periodically. So I've created a script which is at the moment just using SP Blitz. It goes there, deploy it, picks up the data, dump it in a CSV file. So it creates a CSV file locally on their server, one CSV file, and then I use that CSV file, bring it to my system, and run another script which goes through that CSV file and puts it nicely in a Word format. So if you are doing it for one or two servers, that is fine. That will be quick. Like you can go physically RDP into it and just run the scripts or whatever, and then collect the data and nicely make a Word document or whatever, a nice report, and send it to them. But if you are doing it for 110 instances, then it is a long job. One of my colleagues, he did actually for them, and it took him 21 days. 21 days to physically go to each and every server, run the scripts, whatever scripts he was using, and then bring back the data, compile the file locally, and then he made that report. It was like over 100 pages, but it took him 21 days to do that. And then I asked him what he was doing, so he said, mostly I was using SP Blitz to do that. So I said, okay. So then we had another client, they had 50-something systems. So I deployed this one on their machine. So like it goes there. So what it does, some of their machines, they had more than one instance, like 2-3 instances. Some of them, they had 5-10 instances as well on one VM. So I picked up a small module from TechNet, Microsoft Gallery, which what it does, it goes and checks how many instances are installed on that VM. That's what it does, and gives you the name of those instances. So I used that one in this. So I used a get SQL instance. It's a function which is available from Microsoft TechNet. So I've downloaded that, I've used it here. So what it does, it goes to each and every VM, it checks how many instances of SQL Server running there and just gives you the name. So I use those SQL instance names and then run my code, which is SP Blitz. It just goes and deploy the SP Blitz on the local machines, and then creates a CSV file, puts it on a C drive, and then you just copy it, bring it back, and run another script, which will give you a nice and nicely formatted Word document, which you can send it to your client if you have. So I can quickly show you this. I think it is about to finish. We are 20th September, 7:30, 7:45 in the morning. So this is that script which is actually checking deploying SP Blitz and then bringing the results back. Most of the code is SP Blitz. That's why it's 8,000 lines. Okay, so it took 5 minutes and 39 seconds, 922 files it restored. Just to make sure that everything is up to date, we will just run this one. Add to AG, hopefully it will not. Okay, another one executed because I used up to 2030, I think. Yeah. and it's 2130. So we are missing some of the transaction log files. Anyways, let's go with this last one and then we'll finish. So for this, I'm just using these two SQL instances, SQL A and SQL B. So now it's going and checking and deploying SP Blitz. If it is not there, it will deploy SP Blitz, and then it will run SP Blitz, bring the result back, and dump it into a CSV file. Yeah, so it's completed. So this is the CSV. As it is using those COM objects, the second script, so I can't use that there because most of the servers, they don't have Microsoft Office installed. So that's why I'm using this, my own local laptop for that. File name is correct. And this is the file. This is the script which will create the Word document. That is what it is doing. So it created because there were only two, so that's why. This is the health check document. So you can put it in a template or whatever. So that's how it creates. Okay, so any questions? I think this one I didn't show you much about how the code is. So in the log backup one, any questions from the transaction log backup restores? No? Okay, that's it. Thanks for listening. Yeah, okay, yeah, one question. So,